Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores and welcome everybody to the Council chambers this evening. We're glad you're here. Second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and nature thereof, and I'll ask any member if they have any pecuniary interest they'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can declare one anytime if you need to. We have no additions or deletions. We have no open forum. So that moves us on to delegations. And we have one delegation this evening. And I just remind our delegation that our delegations are 10 minutes in length. And we appreciate you hewing closely to that time frame. I'm sure you will. And so with that, I'll call up Fred Kuntz and Brad Ellsworth. And they're going to give us an OPG update. And Brad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillors. We'll stick to our time limit. I can see with all the Raptor sweaters, people do want to get out on time tonight. So I'm Fred Kuntz, and I'm here with Brad Ellsworth, who's the Western Waste Operations Manager. And we have a brief agenda. Looking for the slide present. Is the deck available? We're just going to give you an operations update on the Western Waste Facility and then talk about our DGR project and our engagement with First Nations and Métis. A few notes about OPG as a company and what we're doing to support community groups here at home. So I'll turn it over to Brad for the Western Waste.
All right. Good evening. I'm Brad Ellsworth. I'm the Ops Manager for the Western site. Just at the WWF, we process and store all low and intermediate level waste for all three OPG-owned facilities in Ontario, Darlington, Pickering, Bruce. We also store all the used fuel from the Bruce facility, but only Bruce. The used fuel from Darlington and Pickering is actually stored on their facility premises. All this is considered interim storage until we can build our DGR for permanent disposal. This year, just as everyone can see up there, we celebrated 8 years without a lost time access at the facility. Significant accomplishment for our facility and our team, and a testament to our dedication to the safety that our staff put forward out there. Under our license we received in 2017, we continue to build new facilities at this site. We currently are in the process of preparing ground and starting construction of 5 new multi-purpose storage buildings for low-level waste. So that is going on. Construction of these first 3 buildings is supposed to start end of 2020 is when we're going to start that. We also have plans to build a sorting facility at the site. This is really in the design part of that right now, and that is to keep with looking at reducing our environmental footprint, going back through the old waste that we have stored, looking to see if we can free release, process, do different things to try and reduce our footprint out at that site. So we find items that are clean and we can be recycled, reused. Copper wire is one of them, so that helps us out. So that new sorting building will help us do a lot of that. We also have license approval to build 4 more used fuel storage buildings. Again, they are going to be, the first 2 of those are scheduled to be in service by the end of 2020. We recently performed upgrades to the incinerator and main processing building at the WWMF, and this was a vital element of our preventative maintenance program and strategy to ensure the incinerator is ready and reliable for future station support. In addition, the equipment is crucial to our facility to help us reduce our footprint again. We get almost 80 to 1 reduction when we use our incinerator on site. So it helps us reduce our footprint, reduce our storage needs on site. The one other thing is we're continuously improving our environmental monitoring to provide peace of mind to the public. So an example of this we have going on right now is our C14 work, our carbon 14 work that we're doing on site. So C14 emissions are always far below the maximum release limits to the environment, known as DRLs or drive release limits. But we did notice small increases over years. The C14 has been increasing, which we trace to an issue with the gaskets on certain containers we have in ground. So as a result, we're upgrading all those gaskets, replacing them to make sure they're back up. And we're also creating a more robust sampling analysis program as well as enhanced monitoring program and reporting system to track C14 emissions and trends going forward. So demonstrating how we have top environmental performance and protection at the top of our minds. So that's it for our site right now.
Thanks. So an update on our DGR project that keeps on giving. So just back to basics, this is our lasting solution for low and intermediate level waste. It's proposed to be built 680 meters underground at the Bruce site in solid, impermeable rock, and it'll protect the lake, the environment, and the people for generations to come. We're currently seeking federal approval of the environmental assessment. A joint review panel held public hearings in 2013 and 14 and then recommended in 2015 that the environmental assessment be approved. The panel said the project should be built now rather than later. In 2016, the Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change asked OPG for more information about alternate locations, and we provided that additional report. And then in 2017, the Minister asked for more information about how the DGR would affect Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And I'll speak more about that in just a moment, but first, a reminder that last year OPG renewed the 2004 DGR hosting agreement with Kincardine. That agreement also benefits the 4 adjacent municipalities, including Saugeen Shores. In an amending agreement ratified in February 2018, half the monies that were put in trust in recent years were released to the 5 municipalities, and the annual payments resumed in December last year at the 50% level, where they'll continue until the project is either approved or not. So on to Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, or SON, as we say. OPG committed in 2013 it would not build the DGR without SON support. The SON has long maintained that before addressing the DGR issue, it first needed to make substantial progress with OPG on legacy issues. Now, legacy issues are historic issues related to 60 years of nuclear development in SON territory without SON involvement in the earliest years. In March of this year, OPG and SON reached an interim agreement on legacy issues. This agreement lays the groundwork for further progress in 2019 and beyond to identify and resolve those historic issues. The Intermeasures Agreement is not about the DGR, but it does help to clear the way for a SON decision on the DGR. So the updated DGR analysis that OPG owes the federal minister must be informed by the results of SON's own community process. And SON has said its members will vote on the DGR toward the end of this year. So to that end, OPG's been meeting with SON members at both the reserves of Nawash and Saugeen, and also where many SON members live off reserve in towns around Ontario. We're meeting with them to answer their questions so SON members can make an informed decision. OPG is also engaged in continuous dialogue with Métis communities through regular quarterly meetings, both on the proposed DGR and on regular operations at the Western Waste Facility. OPG and the historic Saugeen Métis renewed their long-term agreement in September last year, and an existing agreement between OPG and Métis Nation of Ontario is up for renewal this year. So a few highlights about the company. We have a new CEO, Ken Hartwick, who took the position in April, and he's worked for us for a number of years, so he's a familiar entity. The Darlington refurbishment, Canada's largest clean energy project for now until Bruce Power's MCR starts. It continues on time and on budget. OPG supported Bruce Power in its application for its license renewal MCR, and we're collaborating with them on their project. We'll also be helping to manage the waste from the removal of their old reactor components. We're proud to say we just completed our 44 megawatt Nanticoke solar project, which is built on the site of a former coal plant in Nanticoke on the shore of Lake Erie. And we're proud to support the first regulatory application for a small modular reactor in Canada. That was submitted in March to the CNSC. It's a significant milestone in the Canadian nuclear industry. It supports a project proposal for a micro modular reactor at Atomic Energy of Canada's Chalk River site. And we continue to support between 70 and 100 programs here in the Bruce area every year, from things like the Kincardine Scottish Festival, Pumpkin Fest in Saugeen Shores, local fish hatcheries, including in Port Elgin, tree planting, and other worthwhile initiatives. Groups interested in knowing more about this program can apply to Linda Kane in our office here. Her information's on the OPG website, or you can ask me. And that's our presentation.
Thank you very much, Fred and Brad. I'll ask if there's any questions from members of the committee. Start with Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming. First of all, I've had the privilege of touring the facility at Western Waste, and in particular seeing the incinerator in action. It's quite fascinating. So if you do have an opportunity, I encourage you to attend that as well. I just want to commend you for being stewards of nuclear waste in our country, and furthermore, for stewarding that the sense of community and how our community can benefit from nuclear, both from its generation through to its end of life. Brad, you mentioned in your presentation about significant construction activities. Can it be assumed that those are to facilitate waste being generated as a result of nuclear refurbishments at Darlington and Bruce?
Yes, a lot of it will be coming from the OPG and the Bruce MCR. There's also just standard production from the ongoing reactor.
Further comments or questions? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I have a question and I guess a couple questions for Brad primarily. You mentioned carbon-14, so my recollection from my time in the nuclear business was that carbon-14 is a gaseous release, is it not? Is it like particulate escaping?
It can be particulate as well, or gaseous.
Okay. All right. So, but you've got that under control, and like you said, it's all underneath, well below
our release limits that we're allowed on site. That's
right. And with regards to the 5 new buildings for low and intermediate, and 4 new spent waste buildings that you're going to be constructing towards the end of 2020. This sounds like a pretty big project. What are these 50,000 square foot buildings? Or
they hold the multiple. They're still at the design in terms of exactly how much, but our typical LSBs would hold about 6,500 cubic meters of waste.
So they're large.
They're significant.
Walmart-sized buildings, right?
Yes, correct. And each
my recollection going in to visit too was they're huge, right?
Correct. And each storage facility the new design is right around 600 DSEs.
I'm thinking about the manpower requirements. As we know, 2020 is a big date for Bruce Power. They're going to be starting the MCR project, and there's going to be an army of construction trades, and this is just going to add on top. Do you have any idea what the impact is for the number of workers you're going to need for a project like this?
I couldn't answer that.
No. Okay. Thanks very much.
Sure. Councillor Rich.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation. Thanks for bringing it forward. Something that piqued my interest was a small modular reactor that you're going forward with in Chalk River. And I've heard about stuff like this in the past. Is this sort of the way of the future, or can you just expand on it a little bit?
Yes, small modular reactors. So, our typical reactors now, like the ones at the Bruce site are, 800 megawatts, 700 to 800 megawatts. Small modular reactors can be, 50 to 200 megawatts. Some of them are small enough to fit on the back of a truck. And the good thing about them is that they're very mobile, but also you can move them to places like Nunavut or the Ring of Fire in Ontario, remote communities, possibly even, Alberta's oil sands, which, if it had a nuclear reactor to do the processing, would be a much cleaner operation than it is today. So this is very much the wave of the future.
Further comments or questions from members? I don't see any. Well, thanks very much, guys, for coming. We always appreciate getting the update from OPG, and with regard to the Western Waste Management Facility and the DGR project. So we appreciate your recurring appearances at council, and we hope to see you again. And I think that, and just to sort of follow up on what Councillor Rich was asking about with regard to the small modular reactors, I mean, that really is one of these exciting things, the opportunity to see growth in the nuclear sector in an affordable way, but also in a way that's going to, I think if you're really serious about fighting climate change and you're serious about reducing carbon emissions and continuing to supply the kind of power we need to power Ontario and power in Canada, you're going to have to be mixing in some nuclear into that mix, and the small modular reactor is a great innovative way to sort of bring that, as you say, to communities that need it. So it's great to see OPG innovating in that way. We hope to be doing more innovation in the nuclear sector in this community, and and across our region, and I know OPG is going to be a big partner in that as well. So, so once again, thanks for coming in, and come back anytime.
Thank you very much.
So that brings us on then to, we have no public meetings, so that brings us on to report of municipal officers, and right down to 7.3, and an infrastructure and development report. The first item is a staff report on parking bylaw update, and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Senior staff worked together on this report. We were to answer the 3 questions that were put forward by Councillor Grace from the last time we brought the parking bylaw forward. So the first request was to look at extending the 15-minute to a longer duration, and in this report we've proposed to extend that to a 30-minute loading and unloading extension. The second question was to determine if there was a way that the town could help provide financial support for the work to be done on private property. Staff have determined that there is not a means for us to provide that financial assistance. The third was to review other lanes in Southampton and see if this policy would have a negative effect on any of those properties. So through visiting all the lanes, we were able to identify the potential of 14 properties that could have impacts that did not have clearly defined parking on those properties. They were all specific to Southampton. We didn't find any in Port Elgin. So with that, we propose the recommendation of the same as before, but adding or changing the provision to be 30 minutes for Lambert Lane.
Read the recommendation, and we can have questions or comments. It's recommended that Council pass a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the parking bylaw 51/2013. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Start with Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the Director. When you went through all these other lanes in Southampton, you said you found similar circumstances where there weren't clearly defined parking spaces for the premises that have been there for decades, or in some cases centuries, or century. And is it conceivable then that we would see a similar restriction on these properties as we're proposing to be put on to Lambert Lane, where there's only a 30-minute unloading and loading period?
Mr. Mayor, that would, I guess, be something we would look at as each one comes forward. Right now, they all have the no parking provision. There hasn't been any discussion moving forward as to what we would do in those instances. When those signs go up, that's sort of when we would have to take that into account.
So currently people are parking there, but we're going to put a no parking sign up soon.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No, I'm saying that currently there's no parking. So in 2013, that parking bylaw was amended to say on the various lanes in Southampton. So the parking bylaw is in place on those lanes, that there is no parking on them. At this time, there aren't signs on all those lanes. So if there are people parking on there without parking on their lots, then that's a current condition. And if we were to put signs on those lanes, that's when we would start to see the residents coming back identifying that they didn't have parking on their property and were needing to accommodate it on the lanes. But it still poses the same restriction where the garbage trucks can't use the lanes properly and the fire trucks can't use the lanes in its current.
But there's no parking on these lanes, but there's just no signs. So people are doing whatever they want there.
I don't know if there are people parking on the road that's causing an issue on the other lanes. I do know that there is a no parking bylaw on those lanes and that they're not all signed.
Okay.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as the Director said, I was the person who put forward the motion the last time to try to go back and see if we could work out something. And I appreciate the work that the staff put into this, and I understand the need for providing access for emergency vehicles. For instance, with Burns Lane, though, there's lots of room for emergency vehicles to get in there, I think, because that's the lane where the tennis courts are on one side, and there's a big lawn sloping down there. I don't see that necessarily having the same kind of emergency access problem. I'm disappointed that we couldn't come back with some kind of compromise. I had hoped that we could work out some kind of encroachment agreement with the affected property owners. On Lambert, there are about 6 properties that are affected, so that we could work out some kind of signed agreement with property owners to allow a little bit of our property and a little bit of their property to give them enough room to do a parallel parking spot. In the case of some of these people, they are facing significant hardships, financial hardships. There are a couple of properties I'm thinking of where there are large drops down in grade. In one case, there's really extensive hardscape that's been put in place, hot tub, decking, all kinds of things. And the bottom line is that our town didn't do a very good job of communicating with these residents at the time when this parking bylaw went into place in 2013. And so the other thing I have a problem with, I guess, is that I'm not sure, it doesn't appear to me that this parking bylaw is going to be equitably enforced. I don't really see how it can be done, and I know that our bylaw complaint process or enforcement process is based on complaints, but I also think that we have a duty to be equitable, and so as it stands, I can't support the bylaw. I do appreciate all the work that went into trying to come up with a solution, but I won't be supporting the bylaw in its current form.
The director has a comment.
I just want to make a clarification. Excuse me. For parking, we are allowing boulevard parking. So as long as the tire is not on the asphalt, we're allowing a parallel spot within our right-of-way. It just will also take part of their property to be able to do that. So if you need 3 meters for a parallel spot, then the first half a meter will be from the asphalt to the property line, which would be on town property. If they want to do a full perpendicular spot, which would be 6 meters long, then that same 0.5 would be allowed on our property, and they would need 5.5 onto their private property. So you can park they will be allowed to park in the boulevard.
Councilor Grace.
Just following up then, if an individual property owner wanted to talk to staff about what the specifics of that solution would be, they should contact you?
I wouldn't be able to provide consulting engineering advice on it. They could get an engineer to do a design for them, but we would give them permission to park from the edge of that asphalt within our property on.
Thank you.
Councilor Rich.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting the bylaw today. I think that it's good to give the residents a little bit of extra access time. And I would have brought this to you before, Amanda, but it just kind of occurred to me. Have we ever investigated, because it's about access, right? Have we ever investigated saying you can only park on one side of the street and we'll have a one-way, like change the flow in a different way? And so I apologize for not bringing that forward.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have done that exact analysis. We only have a 6 meter wide right-of-way, and we need the width for the fire trucks for access around for when it's placed with the hoses to actually use the fire truck. Plus, Basra needs, like we went through the distance or the width of the truck, plus they need 3 feet to actually do the recycling on the addition of the width of that truck, plus 3 meters for the width of a parked car doesn't fit.
The comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, my only comment, well, through to the director, Amanda, just wondering, the one concern I did have was about the financial burdens, members of the public. Can you explain to me when it says to explore options for the municipality to lessen the significant financial burdens on the affected properties? What kinds of options are we talking about here? What are you going to be discussing? What are some of the options?
There aren't any options that the municipality can give the homeowners money to help build their parking lot. The only thing we can do is provide the ability to use our land for their personal or private use through the parking.
So the committee provided the following direction, and one was to explore options to lessen significance. So what you're saying is there really are no options to lessen financial significant burdens. Is that what you're saying?
There is not a method that the town can provide financial assistance to these homeowners, which is what we believe the intent of the reduced financial burden was.
You looked at all, so that's all been looked at.
The CAO.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the language tonight has been about providing access to emergency vehicles and BOSRA vehicles. We also do regularly get complaints from neighbors that aren't able to navigate the laneway, so they're frustrated because they drive through. So it's based on emergency access and a larger vehicle like BOSRA, but there are residents on the road that do complain to us.
Thank you. Further comments? Just a couple of comments. One, I guess maybe potentially directed to the Director of Protective Services. I wonder, I think residents may have justifiably been waiting to take action on a parking solution on their own property, waiting for us to do this and have this conversation. And so we are having this conversation, and if this bylaw passes this evening, I wonder, in my view, I think it would be fair for the municipality to suspend enforcement of the bylaw for a period of time, a reasonable period of time, allowing those property owners to come up with that solution. I think, in other words, it would be, I think, not just of us to pass a bylaw and then the next day head out and start ticketing people for being parked on that lane. They just simply won't have had time to do anything. Can the administration take action on that without direction from council, or does council, or would you rather council gave some direction on that point? I guess that's. Hope that's clear enough. Question.
I think I understand the question, Mr. Mayor. We want to work with these property owners the best we can, and we need the board tonight to know that they cannot park on the travel portion of the road. I spoke to the bylaw officer this morning about it, and more of a technicality than anything, we can phase in or delay full implementation of fines. So we can't levy those fines until it's properly signed. We could pass a bylaw tonight and give those property owners notice, and then spend the next couple of months working with them to find solutions, and come after Labor Day, say, put the signs up and then start fining if necessary then. But warnings would be issued, do everything we possibly could to let them know that we want them parking on their own property instead of on the travel portion of the road.
So the message is then that the municipality does not intend to be draconian about this, but instead will work with the property owners in recognizing that they will need some time to take action, and we won't be bringing the hammer down, so to speak, right off the bat. So that's good news. The other comment I wanted to make is my discomfort with the way that this discussion about the other lanes where this issue is, and this fact that enforcement is contingent on signage, but we have a bylaw. The bylaw sits there. It's in effect, whether there are signs or not, that says that parking is prohibited on these lanes. It's been there. It's now been there for 6 years. I'm uncomfortable with the concept that we will now, every time we address one of these streets one way or another, we put up some signs, and then suddenly we have this happen again, where everybody's like, wait a second, we haven't been allowed to park here for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. How come we didn't know? So I really think that we ought to take some action now to advise the entire community, or at least all the people on all those lanes, that since 2013 and today, this is what the bylaw says. They should be made aware of that. This was the mistake, and I'm the only one left, so I will take all the blame on myself. I am the only one left from 2013 who was here and voted for that bylaw amendment. And it was a mistake at the time that we, clearly, where we should have said, these are the rules, and they've changed, and you should know about this. And so I really feel like today, as soon as we can, we should advise the community that these rules are in place, and we may hear about that back. People may be upset, but we should be honest with them and say, here's what it is, and so they can be aware, so that when the signs come, they won't be caught off guard, and we won't have these issues. I mean, we're still going to have conflict, I'm sure, but they should be advised. So I hope we can do that. Can we do that, do you think, the director?
Yep. Through you, I actually have it on the agenda for SMT, or senior management, for next week to discuss. Good. So I had two ideas on it. One is that we put out a communications piece, news release, and mailouts specifically about it now. The second one is we tie it to the transportation master plan, because that's coming back with an ideology for each type of road and where parking and those things can be accommodated and how. So either we wait and tie it to that public information center that's in August as information and discussion, and then move forward with notification of people in the fall about where parking is restricted, or we do it following the adoption of this bylaw. So we'll discuss that next Tuesday, and then we can bring that back on the 24th for information.
Good. I appreciate that. So if there's nothing further, then you have heard the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3. That's carried. Okay, that moves us then on to item 7.4, Community Services, Parks and Recreation, staff report on the YMCA business plan and the Director of Community Services.
Thank you. Since 2007, staff have provided Council with a series of next wave phases that have provided input with respects to audits and condition reports of Centennial Pool, as well as conceptual drawings for a proposed new pool and site proposals. At a November 13th, 2017 special meeting of Council, staff presented 3 reports. One included a potential location for a new facility, conceptual drawings for a facility, as well as a business plan on a municipally operated standalone aquatic facility with walking track at a potential annual operating expense of over $500,000. At that time, Council directed staff to seek partnership opportunities to advance a new pool and related amenities. At the May 28, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council directed staff to proceed with an MOU with the YMCA of Owen Sound Grey Bruce and authorized staff to proceed with the execution of a market study. On April the 8th of this year, at a Committee of the Whole meeting, Council received the market study. Mr. Stevenson's presentation identified that a membership base is a financially sustainable way to provide a recreation facility, including aquatics, and the Y model is one that reflects that. In Ontario, there are limited opportunities for alternative partnerships, and the trend is definitely membership-based. A membership-based management operation is critical to the success of the venture and is proven to be sustainable. Last month, the Director of Corporate Services presented 2 reports to Council. The Legacy Reserve Fund is intended for large infrastructure projects which provide benefits for the whole community and potentially could be considered for recreational sports and cultural centres. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant is allocated between 2019 and 2028 and vary each year. With this information in mind, Council should consider commencing construction for a recreational facility in 2023. Staff is recommending that the immediate next step is to prepare a business plan based on the success of the market study in partnership with the YMCA. The business plan will provide aquatic features along with the required added amenities and the need to ensure a financially sustainable facility based on the results of the project membership. Reporting of the results of the business plan can be expected in the 4th quarter, and there's no financial impact at this time.
Thank you. So I'll read the recommendation, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that Council direct staff to partner with the YMCA of Owen Sound Grey Bruce to create a business plan for a Saugeen Shores YMCA facility based on results of the market study. Questions or comments? And I believe Councillor Schreider is first.
Thank you, and through you. Thanks for this report, Jean. No secret whatsoever, I definitely 100% agree that we are in need of a new pool. We've needed it for quite some time, so there's no question in that I support that. I think my concern has been and continues to be, do we need a fitness center and studios and everything that comes that comes along with those types of facilities, especially when it comes to competing with existing local businesses, and that's where I struggle a little bit. I think that economic development not only stimulates new growth and business growth and attracting new businesses, but there's also a component to it that I feel that we have to nurture our existing businesses as well. So taking that into consideration. I do think that the Y is a wonderful partner in communities. They're very successful in what they do. I also look at it that the future of aquatics and the pool building, I think, is a topic right now because of the hard work that Parks and Rec staff have done for over the last few years, especially Shannon Reed, Michael Hunt, yourself as well, facility staff that keep that building open and the programs running. They've driven up the programs. They've also brought in a lot more patrons into the building, but also expanded to the waterfront because of that programming. And I think my concern is that, it's hard to imagine a day where the aquatics in Saugeen Shores isn't under the municipal umbrella. And that's just a concern that I have as well. What will we get with the business plan? Because I think throughout there's different pieces of the puzzle, and we're waiting for the puzzle to come together so that we can make a decision. But I guess what are the key takeaways from the business plan substance that we would then decide, are we going YMCA? Are we not going YMCA, or what are the other alternatives? And then my next question, I guess, as well, is does the report or the business plan look at just operations or capital? Because throughout the report as well is that we're not sure yet on the location, and I just don't know how a business plan then would be accurate without that location.
Right. Hopefully I've got all your questions, but the outcomes of the business plan will really take into account what the market study told us as far as potential memberships, keeping in mind that the market study identified 50% of the market. So it took a really conservative look at that. Through a business plan, we may even take a more conservative look. We want to be realistic with our numbers. With those numbers in knowing our membership numbers and knowing what those individuals can expect to pay for a membership, we'll start to identify what amenities and what pool size even could be considered in a facility here in Saugeen Shores. Amenities may be our fitness facilities, the gymnasium, meeting rooms, 2 tanks. If it's 2 tanks, what does that look like? If it's 3 tanks, just throwing that out there. It will take that all into consideration. It will be based on operations only at this point. It will not include capital at this point. Do you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. And through you, I guess with that list of amenities that comes back then through the business plan, those are considered negotiable, or those are, if it's going to be a Y facility, these are what they need in order to make that business sustainable?
Yeah, certainly those can be negotiable. And keep in mind, it can be made in Saugeen Shores. It does not need to be a Y cookie cutter type of business plan. It can be what's applicable for our community and what the needs are for community, really based on what we heard through the market study, which is a great document and tool to use.
And just my last final question, thank you very much, is there's no financial impact to do this study. So is that then, is the Y paying for this, but it's also the town is a partner in it though as well?
So we have internal resources that we have the capabilities of doing that as a partnership. So based on the fact that the Y has done them in the past, we'll work together with them, and therefore there's no consultant required for that phase.
Thank you.
CAO.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Jane said, and also I want to make some expectations clear. And I do have experience. I worked in Waterloo, and we built a partnership almost exactly the same in Waterloo, the Stork Family Y. The Y will have non-negotiables to a certain extent. They are non-profit, so they can't raise taxes. They won't build a facility that they can't afford to operate. So when we go through the process, there will be certain things that they will say can't do it. So that those will evolve out of the business planning process. But I also, and the reason I flag that is I don't want to keep going down the road and keep going further and further if there isn't appetite for a YMCA. So it's taking lots of staff resources to do this. So that's something I'd like council to consider.
Further comments or questions from members? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll be supporting the recommendation. I think this goes back 10, 12 years now. We started this process, and 3-4 plans later, and feasibility study, and community involvement. Community have had lots to say with the process. I want to point out three very important things that John Stevenson, Leisure Plan Consultant, stated in his report on May 13th, and that he states that the trend across Canada is for multi-use recreation complexes to be constructed via partnerships, and this is due to rising operational life cycle costs to repair and replace high-ticket items like an indoor rec complex. I think that's a very important point. On page 22 of the feasibility study, of those surveyed, 82.8% would or are somewhat likely to purchase a Y membership. That's a pretty high number. And 71% of that same 82.8% are currently not a member of a fitness facility. So it's very attractive to a fair number of members of our community that this is the right thing to do. 24% of those surveyed have memberships outside of Saugeen Shores. So that says something, about our current pool environment, recreation environment that we have to offer to our community. I know our executive director from Owen Sound, Gail Graham, stated that well over 200 community members in and around Saugeen Shores are members of the Owen Sound Family Y. So they're traveling to Kincardine and Hanover and Owen Sound. So I think that's important to look at that. On page 99 of the study reported that close to 3,000 memberships would be purchased by our residents. And Jane mentioned that that's using 50% of the survey, the capture rate. And I guess one question, I have one more comment that I'll ask Jane of this question is, Jane, if this recommendation is approved this evening, moving forward the business plan, could we expect that perhaps the 50% capture rate, that you could quite conceivably use a higher number, like a 60%, or are you planning on using that 50%? Maybe answer that and then one more comment.
In my conversations with Gail, it is not our intention to use a 50%. We'll use a higher percentage because we want to be realistic. We want to be conservative. And we know circumstances change over the years. So what an individual may have said in their survey yesterday isn't necessarily going to be the same response in a year.
Whichever way this vote goes tonight, and I hope to see it approved, I think we need to see the numbers before we can make an informed decision on whether to move forward with a municipally operated facility versus Y operated. And if it's municipally operated, and Mr. Stevenson again threw out a number back on May 13th, it's an interesting number. And this is, to my view, a little bit high, but he said that a pool and a walking track could cost the municipality upwards to $800,000. It's on tape. We asked the question that night. And if the municipal, Saugeen Shores goes it alone, decide to do that, $800,000 a year over 30 years is $24 million, Mr. Mayor. That's a lot of savings to our community. The Y is a mandate to operate on a break-even basis. And Gail Graham mentioned very clearly, the Executive Director of the Family Y, that over a 5-year period, the objective would be to operate on a break-even basis. Ys cannot operate to lose money. And so I think that's a significant number we need to consider. I've heard the arguments about losing control of operations, and I've heard a whole lot of other arguments why we shouldn't do it. But, in speaking to a fair number of community members, particularly during the election campaign, there seemed to be a whole lot of support to move forward, too. I think when we hear the 82.8% would or somewhat likely purchase a membership, that's a pretty high number, and I think that we'd be making an error not to proceed at this time with at least looking at the numbers. It's not a cost to Jane, your staff, there's no cost to do this next phase, and I think to make an informed decision, we really do need to see the numbers, Mr. Mayor.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I begin, I just want to say that I know we need a pool, but this is something that I've been talking about and have campaigned on for the last 5 years. I've asked this question over and over again. Is this a pool or is it a pool and rec facility? Are we going to build just a pool, or are we going to do something like Kincardine at the Davison Center? Knowing what we have in town, that all our gym spaces in our churches are full, our evening activities are maxed out because we don't have the space, we need a rec center. And it says right in this report, this is not a rec center at the moment. How do we go forward with that? We look at the big picture. We need a second pad at the Plex here. Our numbers dictate that. We have teams, multiple teams going out of town, minor hockey teams. You do not send your kids out of town to rent somebody else's ice. We need a second pad at the Plex. We need new dressing rooms to accommodate that, and that can help alleviate a lot of stress on our buildings. The structure of the building. Is it a brick and mortar, or are we looking at some alternative? On the weekend, I had the opportunity to speak with former MPP Bill Moreau, who is now the mayor of Thunder Bay, and they're building a new recreation facility in Thunder Bay that is an alternative design. And if it can handle a Thunder Bay winter, I'm pretty sure it can handle a Saugeen Shores winter. When the reports came out, it said that Cameron was not an issue because of the slope from the ball diamonds. However, shortly after that report came out, we got a report indicating that we're purchasing the Lamont Sports Complex, what was now going to be the Lamont Sports Complex. I believe we need to look at the Cameron Park issue again as a place where it could possibly go, which comes back to location, location, location. Where is this facility going to be? Some people want it at the Plex. I've just stated two reasons why I don't believe it should be at the Plex. Third reason I can't have it at the Plex and I will not support it at the Plex is we'll be in direct competition with another business in town. 2 years ago, we had a company come into town that wanted to run a rib fest. And we said, no, you cannot run a rib fest in Saugeen Shores because, our Rotary Club will be running one a month later. Well, I do not want to put another business right next door to a business that's already established in town. I also agree with our Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt's statement on the costs. What are the costs? How much is it going to cost us? Councillor Schreider asked the same thing. So we need to look at the big picture. I think we need to just hold off a little bit. I know we need to get moving on this, but there's a few questions that we have to have answered before we can go any further. Location, cost, what's this going to be? I know they said 3,000 people will join. The numbers say that, but we all know in statistics, anybody that works with numbers, you can make statistics mean whatever you want. We need to be sure when we're going forward with this, so I need some guarantees that we'll have these issues addressed before I can go any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? We'll go with Councillor Myatt and then come to Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I will be supporting this recommendation tonight with some reservation. And the reservation, I think, have been expressed around the room, and that's primarily the impact it's going to have on existing businesses. Where the location is an important issue, what the budget's going to be, what the cost of construction is going to be, are all questions that are yet to be answered, and I understand that we don't get all the answers up front. But what I did hear tonight was that we're talking about a construction date beginning in 2023, which is full 3.5 or 4 years out from now. And I believe that gives existing businesses a good heads up that they need to examine their business models, that we need to refine what the business model for this is going to look like. Is it a recreation center? Is it an aquatics facility? It gives us enough time for people to adjust. It's not like we're dropping this in the town today and businesses are going to be flooded with competition. So I will be supporting this, but I look forward to a time when we can give some assurances to other businesses that that we're not out to be in direct competition and not to drive them out of business. We're, in fact, going to be supporting them staying in business.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, my question is simply, can you help us understand the legally binding implications of the business plan, so to speak? My interpretation is that this business plan would help us with the questions that Councillor Matheson and Councillor Schreider have identified in terms of exactly what is proposed in the solution, but I just need to understand the nature thereof in that business plan. Furthermore, I would just like to note that similarly, I share the same concerns about our business, our community partners and businesses in the same line of business. We hear that loud and clear, certainly through the election campaign and in speaking with citizens. It's not dissimilar to what we see in the results of the survey. If it's proper, I would also like to know the Thunder Bay example. Is that a municipal facility? Two separate questions. I apologize.
Questions are posed to the director.
In response to the legally binding question, it does not bind you. It does not bind council. Merely giving you added information so that you can make your informed decision. What the operations are going to be, if it is a Y that is chosen, and the cost for it and the amenities as well.
You can confirm that those costs operationally will be included in that business plan?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's also important to be clear, that this is a two-partner situation here. So the YMCA also needs this business plan too, right? If they're going to enter into this agreement, as I can't remember if it was made when the Vice Deputy Mayor said that the Y operates on a break-even basis. They have to have a business plan that shows that they can do that. They're definitely, I think it was the CEO said, they're not going to build a facility that loses money. Effectively, so they need this business plan to determine whether that's going to work or not. So it's both for us and for them is the only point I wanted to make. Let's get Councillor Rich and I'll come down to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we need these numbers in order to make a decision of any kind. We got to know what we're looking at, and then we also have to look at other options. I hear concerns about local businesses, about staff. This is a great opportunity for us, right? A great opportunity for us to have conversations with local business owners. I had an opportunity to speak to Ann and Gordon McKay today. They'd love to, have a conversation with the municipality about what a facility here would look like, and maybe how they could even be involved if that was at all possible as an alternative. But I think that the important thing for us is to make sure that we have the appropriate numbers first and foremost, and that we're open and are communicating with the citizens. We are communicating with local businesses. I believe that there's room for a Y in addition to other local businesses, because I see us growing. If you talk to people that own local gyms, they'll tell you that they're at capacity. But what they really want to know is they want to have information about what we're going to do so that they can make their own business plans for the future. What I think we need to do is, what I want to do is keep moving forward, keep looking at other locations, keep the conversation moving, but let's not stagnate. Let's keep the ball rolling, because I think as this community grows, this is the time that we need to get involved in these kinds of things and make sure that we build the kind of community we want for the future.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I agree with both Councillor Rich and Councillor Lamont. The Y is a great opportunity. Councillor Lamont, Smith, sorry. I guess Deputy Mayor anyways. Yeah, tit for tat. But I need some assurances. How do we go forward when we don't know where we're going to put it? How do we go forward when we don't know if it's just a pool or if it's a pool and recreation complex? How do we go forward when we don't have that big picture, and I've been saying this for 5 years, the big picture of where we're going to be with recreation? Our numbers, as Councillor Rich has said, have grown astronomically, and I said this, that you'll remember it the very first year we're in here. I said, you do not realize the number of students that are in Saugeen Shores at this moment. 500 kids in kindergarten for the last 4 years. That's phenomenal. And they are moving up. And they are involved. Tonight, we'll have an increase in basketball players. Every time the Blue Jays increase, there's an increase in baseball. If, God forbid, if the Leafs ever win, look what will happen to hockey. Had to throw that one in too. But we have to look at all that, and I need some assurances that those questions will be answered. How do I know that we'll be able to look at, is it one or the other, or are we going to go, I believe in going big. We have to meet the needs, as Councillor Rich said. How do we know where we're going to build it? Can you answer those questions for me? Can somebody help me with that?
I would say that we've done a considerable amount of work on that front for quite a while. In fact, we've had a number of reports that have recommended coming back to the Plex as a location. That's been recommended over and over and over again by my recollection. and I don't know, it may even be in the Recreation Master Plan as a recommendation. Is it?
Correct.
So we did all that work, a considerable amount of work, to come up with that location. But, so I think that, but all of that is sort of, I think, quite frankly, I think we do need to make a decision on the location pretty soon. I'd like us to be able to make applications for provincial and federal funding, which are going to open up pretty soon. I'm entirely prepared to support the Plex as a location for the facility. But be that as it may, and we may get to make that decision soon, or we may not. What we're getting here is a recommendation saying that we can develop a business plan based on the criteria that are laid out in this report, and that will provide us with information that we will need to move forward with this. And I think it's really important to be clear. I mean, one thing we should look at in this report is this chart in here, the 2019 through 2023 chart, partway through the report. That's your construction timeline. That's when we could get this project that I've been sitting here talking about for 13 years, and some have been around longer, talking about it even longer than that. We could actually get it done. We could cast a vote before the end of this term to construct this facility. Now, I think that that's what everybody wants to do, right? I think so. But we can't delay any longer. And is it ever going to be perfect? Are we going to have a perfect scenario where everybody's going to jump up and cheer when we do it? Probably not. We're probably not going to have that. We're probably going to have to make some difficult choices to get it done. But I think we want to get it done. And I also think that if we start making decisions now, without all the information, that take options off the table, particularly options that could save us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in operating costs. Based on the last report I saw, the last pool study, it was a $500,000 operating cost just for a pool, which is $250,000 more than we spend right now, a 2.5% tax increase. If we eliminate the YMCA as an option today without all the information, that is a vote to increase the tax levy on operations by $250,000 a year when we build the thing. And that's if we don't have a rec center, which I think lots of us want. So, and as we make those decisions, that starts to jeopardize my vote in favor of it. Because I'm going to have a lot of trouble supporting a facility that's going to massively increase taxes in one shot. I think probably a lot of other people will too. So let's keep this on the table. Let's keep working on it. There's other people out there, as Councillor Rich pointed out, who may have ideas. We're open to ideas. This doesn't close the door. It doesn't say we're only dealing with the YMCA. It doesn't ink a deal with the YMCA. Just collecting more information so we can get to the point to make a decision. And if there are folks out there in the community who have other ideas that could work, let's hear them. Bring them to us, and we'll hear them. So I really encourage Council to keep this in play and get all the information. Once we have the information, a moment will come when we can decide YMCA or no. But that's not right now. And let's keep getting information and keep moving it forward so we can get to this 2023. I want to see this thing built. I want to see us pass. I want to see us have that vote in 2022 for construction. So let's move that forward. I think Councillor Schreider, and then I'll get the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you. And the discussion around the table, I think, is what we need in order to keep the momentum going. And previous comments definitely do not want to slow the process down. I think it's a matter of, again, just pieces of the puzzle. We need the whole puzzle. If the business plan will provide us with accurate information and substance in order to make this decision, then I think that we do support that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that where the confusion sometimes happens is just not having all of that information, and I think the location is a big thing, and the capital is a huge thing, because I don't know how to create an effective business plan without those key important pieces of information. And I guess my question then would be, when are we deciding on a location? Is it after the business plan then, or during? Those important pieces of the puzzle, I think, is what I'm hung up on right now.
Maybe the Director can make some comment about how location factors into the business planning. I assume that's something you've considered and could comment on.
Yeah, we'll certainly take that into consideration as we prepare for the business plan, and we may even provide a couple of options for Council so that they can see whether it's attached versus not attached to this facility. So we can certainly take a look through that process as well.
I think if it becomes necessary, I think Councillor Schreider makes a good point. I know others agree. If it becomes necessary to have a location to move the business plan forward, by all means, bring a decision to this council and let us make it, and then move it forward. I'm not, I realize there'll be disagreement, but we'll make a decision at least, and we'll move it forward. And so definitely keep that as an option. The Deputy Mayor.
So, can you tell me, are we moving forward with the Y as just the pool, or are we looking at a pool and rec facility in this decision?
What we're looking at in this decision is a business model, which will come back to us and tell us what, as the CAO said, what their goes and no-goes are. I assume the YMCA will have things they have to see in a facility if they're going to be running it. And so we'll get that business plan back. It'll tell us, hey guys, if we want to build this, if you want the YMCA to run this facility for you, it needs X, Y, Z, including a pool. And there you have it. And we can say, well, we're okay with that or we're not. But that's what we're going to get here is a business plan saying, here's what a YMCA membership-based model looks like in your community, and here's what it costs to run, et cetera, et cetera. And we can vote that up or we can vote it down.
But the report said the drawings include double tank, walking track, meeting rooms. They did not include fitness facilities or gym facilities.
Clarity, I'm not sure.
I can share with you a pool. YMCA will not build just a pool and a walking track. They will want the added amenities because it increases membership.
That's great, but I'm just going by what the report says here. Page 2, top of page 2. Perkins Willis worked closely with staff to prepare conceptual drawings that outline multiple options of what could be considered with the new facility adjacent to the Plex. The drawings included double tank, walking track, and meeting rooms. They did not include fitness or gymnasiums.
I think the director can
so that report was before we even started to have conversations with the Y, and it was from that meeting when this council decided or asked staff to proceed to look for memberships, partnerships. I just wanted to add, too, in regards to the business plan, it's also the YMCA that has to approve it. It's not just this council. So the YMCA may even say at the end of it, doesn't work for us, we're not going to proceed with this. So I caution council on that. There's two parties here that have to agree to the business plan.
Yeah, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
What it really comes down to for this council to be able to make an informed decision, we really do need to see the operational costs for a family-wide to come in here with a pool, double tank, fitness facility, walking track, gymnasium. That's what a Y comes with in a Y application. So, and that was all done in the feasibility study. That was well talked about. And we're not back in 2010. We're at last year, the feasibility study and what the amenities are, what the Y would offer. And I for to make an informed decision, I need to know what the subsidy is, if any, to the family Y for year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hopefully after year 5, I see zero. With the hope that we'd save upwards to $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 per year to our taxpayer over 30 years, $25 million. That's what I'm interested in seeing. The location of the facility, we'll get there, but I need to see the numbers, what it's going to cost to operate that facility by the Y with those amenities, and what the cost is year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And until then, I can't make an informed decision either, and none of us can. But until we see those numbers, then let's have a meaningful discussion. What it's going to cost this municipality for those first 5 years, and beyond, and what potentially could save this municipality for the next 25, 30 years. Let's not build a facility for 5 years from now. We're going to 19,000 people, 20,000 people in 10 years. This is a growing community. Let's not be short-sighted. I'm getting ahead of myself with what, let's wait to see what the report says. I think we really have to think longer term. As Councillor Rich alluded to, we're growing.
I think we've had a good discussion on this one, and I think we have a lot of reason to be excited about what we're doing here and to be optimistic. So I'll call the question on the recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Okay, that moves us then on to... that moves us on to 7.6, communications and petitions for Committee of the Whole action. And we have 2 items on there. The first one is a resolution from the municipality of Brockton regarding community safety and well-being plans. And I'll look for direction from the committee. You have maybe the chairman of the police board, you've been involved in a little bit of this. Do you have any comments on it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Certainly in conjunction with the Grey Bruce Health Unit and the police boards, police forces, we've been working towards these community safety plans, and certainly Saugeen Shores is seen as a leader in that regard, and we do have excellent relationships with the Grey Bruce Health Unit and with our neighboring municipalities, and I think we can do nothing but fully support this motion.
I think there's a motion to support. Is there a seconder for the motion? And seconded by the Deputy Mayor. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor? Carried. And then that moves us then on to the second communication for action, which is from Saugeen Mobility Regional Transit, a letter about preserving gas tax for the public transportation program. And as the Vice Deputy Mayor, do you have any comments on this? Just hit your mic there, Mike. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Caesar's report on later on as well about the Bill 108. But, the former Liberal government talked about increasing the gas tax, subsidy to municipalities to run transportation system from 2 cents to 4 cents. The Conservative government has since pulled that back. I think there's some real concerns about that. And I think SMART, along with other organizations around the province that run transit service, are very concerned about that cutback, and see that as the future of smart services, transportation services, well, not in full jeopardy, in jeopardy with the cutback in funding. And so I'd support this letter from SMART, that the letter be sent off to the Ministry expressing concern. But I know Bill 108 is a motion, I believe, here this evening. I see in my here this evening. Yes, it is for June 10th. The Bill 108 as well.
It's the Just so we're clear, there's a resolution attached to the letter from SMART,
right,
which is being suggested to council. So, are you moving support for the resolution?
Support the resolution.
Councillor Grace seconds. So there's a mover and seconder to support that resolution. Is there any discussion to the resolution? I don't see any. So all in favor? It's carried. Okay. So there's 5 items there, communications for and petitions for Committee of the Whole information. Does anybody have any comments, questions, any of those? Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make a comment with regards to the correspondence regarding from the Ontario Good Roads Association. As you know, I have attended the Roma conference for the past 4 or 5 years, and I recall a time when Ontario Good Roads Association and Roma, in fact, did have a combined conference. And 3 years gone by now since we had a combined conference, and I do agree with the Roma response in that the role of Roma and the role of the Rural Municipalities of Ontario Association is to advocate on legislation and municipal affairs to the upper tier governments. And I found that the good roads portion of it was much more of a trade show, where you learned about advancements in gravel cycling and road maintenance and street lighting and culvert maintenance and things like that. So I found that sometimes there was a conflict there. And so what Roma has said, just for a bit of background for you, is that they're not interested in getting back into the combined conference, that we've developed our own identity, and we concentrate those 2.5 days at the conference on pure advocacy and things that are most important to municipal councillors as opposed to road superintendents. So I agree with the response. It's unfortunate that the divorce took place in the first place, but I think that the way we are now, we're in better stead.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on any of those items? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this for me, but maybe it's something we can look at. I got questions concerned to some of the notes here from the BIA. The first one, I'm just kind of curious as to the farmers market that's happening downtown. I'm just curious if do they come back and give us a report on what we're looking at, like how many local businesses are actually partaking in that one, and if we are seeing spinbacks from that one, if it's working out for them in their favor. And the other one I was actually kind of curious about too is I see that they've recommended for the Santa Claus Parade to close them down, or not close them down, sorry, to alternate back and forth each year from Port Ellen to Southampton. I'm just curious as to how that's come up.
So the BIA does come in on occasion and present to council, usually probably in association with their budget. But certainly we can, when they do come, we can ask those questions of them, and I know they will. I'm sure Councillor Smith will carry that message back, your comments, and I'm sure the BIA will be able to answer them. With regard to the Santa Claus Parade item in there, I think it's really a Chamber of Commerce event, not a BIA event or a town event, the Santa Claus Parades, and I guess the BIA, or the Chamber of Commerce has had some discussions about the future of the Santa Claus Parades. I assume they'll advise this council and the town formally about what they're going to be doing at some point, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss that with them. We are a fairly major funder of theirs for tourism work. In fact, their primary funder. So I do hope that the Chamber will come back to Council and let us know about what their plans are for those parades. So hopefully you'll hear more. Anything further? Nothing further, then. So that moves on to item 8, and we have one report of municipal councillors, and it's a report from Councillor Rich, one that I've been eagerly anticipating on recycling. So I turn it over to our friend Councillor Rich.
Oh, there's going to be some kind of excitement tonight, that's for sure. The old recycling report. I'm going to just use some props here and get it going, but just give me a sec. Doing my best. I'll speak as much as I can. Paper, obviously plastics, cans, everything's there. So there's a number of things I kind of want to talk about. So we're going to start off with the history of Basra. Is it best from here, or do you think I'll get? Yeah. Right. So I don't know if anybody knows that Basra was started, the initiative was started by Saugeen Shores. I think that's something we should be pretty proud of. What's that? Carry it around like a microphone, yeah. But I think that that's a really good thing that we got all the communities in Bruce County to participate in a recycling program. If you think about it, anyone that's 30 years of age or younger doesn't know what it's like to not have a recycling program. Those of us who may be a little bit older than that, or when you couldn't recycle at all and you just threw all your cans and all your plastic into the garbage. So one of the great things about Basra is that we have an opportunity, both through the bag tag program and through Basra itself, we are able to divert a lot of garbage from our landfill. Last year alone, we diverted 5,341 tons. Very difficult number to kind of keep track of. But the thing that is most important when we talk about diversion, because of the program that we run, only 2% of all of the recycling ends up going to landfill. So in larger municipalities, places like Toronto or Kitchener-Waterloo, sometimes they have between 30 and 40% of all of the material that goes into a single source recycling bin that'll end up at landfills. At Basra, we have 2%. So, and that's because we don't take, like if this shows up at the curb, our drivers come through, they sort through it, and if they're not going to take it, then they leave it, and then you have to take it. So I think that's a great kind of a win for our story, just and a good message for curbside recycling, which in turn is going to probably be changed in the upcoming future because of a lot of the problems that we're having markets for the products. So currently we have our plastic bag program, and we have a market for plastic bags. So they're going to turn those plastic bags into plastic pellets, and they're going to reuse those. But as long as there's a market for plastic pellets, that becomes a program. As soon as if there ever becomes a time when there isn't a market for those plastic pellets, then we will be collecting bags and we'll have nowhere to put them. So that's actually one of the only concerns that I ever had with that program. So the same thing holds true for all the rest of our recycling. When we look at our plastic bottles, we're looking at commodity pricing. So I don't know does anyone know how much we pay per year per household for recycling? Anyone? That's right, $27, almost $28 a year for recycling. That's a great number. Cities like municipalities, larger municipalities, will pay upwards of $400 a year in order to recycle. And think about that. Of all that money you're spending, and 40% of the recycling actually goes to the landfill. So you're paying for somebody to pick it up to take it to the landfill station. The other thing that I always like to try and make very clear to people is, just because you put it in the recycling bin, it doesn't turn into a rainbow. Doesn't become magical. So you can take this can, for example, or for, let's say, the Tide bottle. Tide bottle. You like my Tide bottle, Dave? Here. So the Tide bottle that Dave's holding up there, right? So parts of that will end up being reduced and used for usable plastic, but there's parts of it that are maybe stuck to the paper, or as you can see on the side of it, there's a product that's still there. Some of that may be contaminated and end up going to a landfill. So we take it here, ship it all the way down to Toronto, where it gets sent to a Toronto landfill. That's not the best way to do it, right? So a lot of the times I'm trying to kind of stay on topic here. So we're legislated to perform. We passed an initiative about increasing diversion rates in Ontario not that long ago. So one of the things that I think that we can really do is change our buying habits. So instead of, I'll go back a step. One of the phone calls that I consistently get, because I'm the chair of BASRA, is whether or not, why don't we take milk cartons or Tetra Paks? And my response is always, because we're concerned about sending Tetra Paks to landfills. And I always say, if you don't want to send a Tetra Pak to landfill, don't buy a Tetra Pak. Don't buy them in this community. Don't buy milk cartons in this community. Don't recycle them. You can buy bagged milk, you can buy plastic milk, you can get apple juice, big plastic containers, and you can put it in cups for your kids. You don't have to buy these products if you're not interested in seeing them. Because if you buy them here, that's where they're going to go. So we have to remember that as consumers, that the big difference that we can make is going to happen from our purchasing power, and it's going to happen from our pocket. So that's one of the things that we can do, that we can all do as individuals. But I would like to take a quick moment to talk about commodity destinations. There's been big changes with regard to what China will take. China is no longer taking as much recycling as they used to, because they don't need it. So that's another way in which we can make a difference. And by stopping our purchasing power with our purchasing. Down the road, we're gonna really have to make a difference, or else we're going to have huge landfills of plastic bottles that'll never make it into end market. And there is a movement to stop recycling specific products. Lots of municipalities that are removing the amount of products that they're taking because they don't have commodity destination. And we just received a report last week that Lacombe, Alberta has actually suspended their recycling program because they don't have any commodity destinations. They've stopped accepting recycling. So as a society, we're going to have to make big choices in the future. But right now, we're successful here in Saugeen Shores. We're making a profit every year. We have $2 million in reserves for expansions and charging municipalities. I think that's a really good news story. And
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Grace.
Thanks, John. And I've got a question about the metal recycling, because one of the articles, or at least one of the articles that you provided in your report, talked about how that was the most lucrative type of material in terms of being recycled. But at another point, I think maybe in that same article, it talked about basically the most valuable types of metal are pop cans and beer cans. But there's some municipality that's not accepting any other metals other than that. Do we have a similar, because you put the coffee can out there, and I know I put vegetable cans and things like that?
So we take all the metal cans, but you're right, there's some products that make more money than others. I think that, is it the Shriners that they put their bins together? That's the stuff that makes money. So I think the Shriners put out those, and they take pop cans and stuff like that. That's the most lucrative part of the market. But if you think about, say for example, not just metal but glass, right? We take glass at a complete loss. And the one thing that they always seem to hammer home is keep the glass out of the paper, right? Because that's how you create sort of the contamination, right? So if you can imagine that you're a paper recycling mill and you have glass that's embedded in all the paper as you're trying to kind of process it, it's going to be very damaging or not very good for your equipment. So you're going to try and kind of keep that out. So keep the glass out of the paper if it's at all possible, because that stuff does get broken and move through. But we make no money on glass. That's taken as a loss. Newspaper, not even an end market for anymore. And then like paper, like regular paper, like this, there's an end market for that, but most of that is actually put through sort of shredding and sent to other companies. It's interesting. I had an opportunity. Councillor Minaj, or not Councillor Minaj, Porter Minaj, interviewed me not that long ago, and he was talking about commodities and destinations and problems with the recycling program. And beside the landfill, there's a whole bunch of recycled bins that are there for people to drop stuff off, and it was completely clean. So we went to the first bin and we popped it open. It was for box board, and it was filled, I don't know, 3/4 of the way with milk cartons. And that goes back to the perception. So I think that in society often people just have that perception. They throw it in the blue bin, they close the lid, and everything's good. So someone in our community wrongly felt very bad about throwing milk cartons into the garbage. So what they did was they kept them all, and then they took them to the dump, and they put them in a blue bin and closed it and felt really good about themselves. And then a Basra employee came over and dumped it all in the dump. We have to be really conscious of what we're doing.
Further comments? Councillor Mayette.
Yeah, just a quick comment, and I think your last point when you were making your presentation is the most important one, which is consumers need to drive the behaviors, and the retailers will follow. I've just heard that one of the major grocery stores in eyesight of here is actually going to brown paper bags instead of plastic bags as a result of consumers expressing concerns over that. And I've heard also that there's another major grocer in town in Southampton who is looking at reusable glass bottles for milk instead of the milk carton. So it's those type of things. If you tell the operator of the grocery stores that this is the type of product that you want to buy, and then they make a business case, they will do it. So that's the best way to go about it, I think.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Saugeen Shores is way ahead of the spectrum in recycling. And you look at what's coming down the pipe by 2021, all single-use plastics will be eliminated, straws and other materials. And as Councillor Mayette just said, and stole my thunder, I was going to say the same thing. A couple of our local groceries are going back to paper. But the problem I see with that is they're charging 5 cents for a plastic bag and 14 cents for a paper bag. So there's not much incentive to take the paper economically when it's there. So we have to, it's what we have to do. And as Councillor Rich said, you have to look at the way we package things. If you don't want Tetra Paks, don't buy them. But we also have to get that message out to the businesses. They have to also start to take ownership. They're creating them, they're polluting them. It's like the tobacco industry. They have to take in ownership of what they do with the product that they create. It's like the oil industry. They have to take ownership. It's maybe time that some of these companies that are making these products start to take ownership for what they're doing and start to have to pay some recycling fees for what's happening to our dumps and our landfills. that's just my thoughts, and I appreciate what Councillor Rich has done, and I look forward to moving forward. Maybe someday Saugeen Shores can have either, some type of machine that grinds up the bottles that uses for pellets that we can ship to a asphalt plant. I know we've done that. We used to do that. I don't know if they still do that. Take the tires and grind them up and use them in the road projects. Plastic goes a long way as well, or something like an incinerator where we can maybe close every dump in Bruce County and bring all that here to not only take it out of the landfill but create a little energy as well. So thank you for your report, Councillor Rich, and I look forward to what's happening in the future.
Further comments for the councillor? Well, thanks very much for doing that, John. We really appreciate it. I think that that's a really important message for us to project at this council. We just heard at our last meeting how our diversion rates have been taking a bit of a hit at late, and one of our most major pieces of infrastructure is our landfill, one that we need to preserve because it's an extremely costly one to replace or expand, and every person in the community needs to pull their weight to make that happen. And they can do that by making choices in their own lives and by using our outstanding recycling program really well, because it's a really great one. And that's really, and I hear that too. I've been out doing presentations the last few months, and people say, why don't we recycle more? And it's just, you can throw whatever you want in the blue box, but it'll just get sorted out and sent to the landfill. You can feel good, but it didn't do anything. And BASRA has always had the philosophy that if we're going to take it, we're going to recycle it. We're just not taking stuff just to feel good and pretend that we're doing something good for our landfill or our environment. So it's a really impressive thing, and thank you for your leadership there on our behalf, Councillor Rich. So that moves us on then to item 9, reports of department heads, and we have 2 of them, and the first one is an information report on the subdivision and site plan development guide. And does the director have comments? The Director of Infrastructure and Development, sorry.
I'll just quickly say that the town has always had documents that guide how we do development in this town. This initiative is to have them all in one place so developers and residents and yourselves can find them all together. So it'll explain the process, it explains the engineering standards, and then it explains how you get from a piece of paper to a built house in the end.
Are there any, thank you, are there any comments or questions to this? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you, and through you. I think it's absolutely great to have planning, pre-consultation, discussions, and feedback. I think it's just brilliant to have this all in one place. Just a really good example of the relationship building with the contractors and the developers. So good job to you guys. You're asking us, though, to review it and provide comment as well. When do you want that back? Because I think you want to deliver a report maybe in September.
That's correct. We've asked the developers to give it back to us within a month, but if you guys were to give it back before mid-August, we could turn something back around to come to committee for September.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to say what a fantastic job this is, and every time I look at one of the subdivision agreements or site plan agreements, I'm always so impressed with the complexity and scope of what's in there. I had a couple of questions. One is, well, it's actually one question, but it involves 2 examples. Most of the time, it seems like you're saying, or the guide says, this type of product shall be used. This, it's very specific in saying, you need to use this particular type of pipe or its equivalent. But in a couple of places, one, it says blind connections are not preferred by the town. And then another place you say the town prefers dry ponds as opposed to several different kinds of ponds. So why is it that in much of it we're saying, you must use this, you shall use this, you should use this, but in those cases you're saying we prefer this?
Thank you. And through you, for the dry pond, for example, that was what we would like all developers to come in with in their applications. But there will be instances where they can justify using one of the other facilities, or a dry pond won't meet the requirements of the MOE, so they need to put in a different facility. Same with the blind connection. So a blind connection is when you don't have a manhole to connect the service into. It's just a T, and it's not easy to maintain. But just say that that sewer was 6 meters underground, and there's a lot of infrastructure in the way. To build that manhole, it would be cost prohibitive for the project. So we would allow it in that case. So the preferred gives us that flexibility to allow for those things to happen, whereas we need a certain specification for water main because we know that one's going to last because the other products have been shown to be not as robust. So we want a certain diameter ratio, and we want a certain material type for us going forward on those pieces.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Is there any danger that someone may try to sort of cut corners by using a method that's not preferred by the town and is not required? It's, you know, their movement towards a particular option is not something that they're being steered towards by an MOE requirement, that they're just doing it to save money.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think so. When it comes to what we're preferring, that's where we start with the pre-consultation. So right before they have their draft plan or their site plan done, they're coming in and we're saying, these are what the things that we want you to do. So they start to build that into their pro forma, and they know that they're not going to get past staff without a really good justification for doing something that's not in their preferred. What we have is preferred. Mostly what people would be doing would be over and above. So like the pond, for an example, the dry pond would be the cheapest. A wetland or a wet pond would be more expensive. When it comes to other things like blind connections, we get calls all the time and asked if we could put in one service to a semi and then split instead of putting two. And we always come back and say no. So they need to come back and tell us that there's something really difficult in the way. So.
Further comments from members? I just encourage all members to review this and get your comments back to the director. There's some stuff in here that is really good. It's a good project, but I think feedback from council will be useful. One thing I noted in here, whatever it's on page 22 or whatever, there's a list of a partial list of agencies for a developer to notify when construction starts, and many of the agencies listed all work for us, but they have to contact each of them. And I think that there's opportunities for us to refine our processes in here where you could have a one-window contact for the town of Saugeen Shores. I'm going to start construction, and everybody would find out. And so things like that. And I think they're the kind of things that members of council might point out or pick out that could be very helpful to the process. So I'd really encourage you to do that. So that moves us then on to the other report, which is an information report on the beach maintenance plan and the Director of Community Services.
I just wanted to outline this evening the beach maintenance plan that some of you may not be familiar with, that staff developed back in 2015. In 2017, we did do an upgrade to the plan, and which included an extension to Goebels Grove, some area that we maintain. Tonight, the content really hasn't changed since 2017 on how we manage our beaches. We've made some improvements to the maps in the document we've provided for you. We've included waterfront ecology and beach processes as well, and we've streamlined the charts to reflect what we do in each of the zones.
Few comments or questions from members? Thank you for providing that. I know that was provided at the request of council made during the budget, so appreciate you bringing it forward for our review. So that brings us to the end of the agenda. So that moves us to announcements by members. And did you have a question? Oh, so announcements by members. Okay, the deputy mayor then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, lots happening around. Saugeen District's own Emily Bryce won first place at OFSA Regionals. That's the best of all Ontario in the 3,000 meters this past weekend. And I just want to congratulate everybody here who attended the Pride Parade. We're looking at doing some fantastic things around town in the upcoming months. And that's it.
Hey, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I participated in the Chamber of Commerce first annual golf tournament last Wednesday, and I just want to thank Cambridge Irwin for her and her entire committee. Steve Harris did a great job organizing the term. It was very, very well attended, and we had a lot of fun. And so hopefully next year we'll see a little more participation around the table too. That would be fun. I watched for the first time, and I encourage people to purchase this DVD if they don't have it. But it's called The Bruce, and this is a 3-part documentary series, and explores the history of Bruce County and the Bruce Peninsula. And the Bruce County Historical Society played a very instrumental role in developing the 3-part series, and in collaboration with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And I want to mention tonight because we have a star performer right around this table that starred in the Bruce, and it's Councillor Dave Mayette, and did a great job in it. Thank you, Dave. Enjoyed watching it. It was fun. So I just want to say, if you haven't seen the Bruce, it's just a really intriguing 3-part series. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
I think he looks tall today. You should have seen him in 1850. He was really tall. Councillor Schreider.
Thank you. I was also at the golf tournament that the Chamber put on at Southport. It was a great event, and the course was in great shape, so it was definitely a fun afternoon. Prior to tonight's council meeting, I actually went to the Racquetball Club, where there was a celebration of life for one of the Saugeen Rail Trail members that have passed away, Randy Latimer. It was a nice event to see the family and a lot of friends, but the rail trail will definitely miss him. He's done a lot of work with them over the years with his equipment and his 2 hands, so they will very much miss him, and we appreciate his efforts over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I would just like to recognize the efforts of the Port Elgin BIA and the Social Athletics of Saugeen Shores organization, who facilitated a Jurassic Park in Saugeen Shores last Friday. So kudos to all of us here who are donning our Raptors in 5 gear. It was a tremendous community event which saw hundreds of individuals out to partake in a real community spirit that we're seeing throughout Canada. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment certainly got wind of our event, so it was a wonderful community event. Thanks to all who participated, in particular the community businesses who really jumped on board with very little notice to support this great event. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Rich.
Thank you. I as well was at the golf tournament. We had a good time. I even hit one shot. Anyway, we used one of my shots, I think. And but I wanted to mention that since last time we were here, I went to the open night of the Music Man at the high school. It was a well-attended event, and the students did a wonderful job. It was really something to see. So I just wanted to mention that they did a great job and commend them.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also went to the Music Man. Great production. Just a wonderful production, and the best fake horse I've ever seen that they got from Stratford, apparently. I also wanted to give a shout out to the grade 5-6 class at GC Houston, which is doing a fundraiser right now to raise money for some schools in Guatemala. And on Saturday, the students organized and ran a very successful lemonade stand where they raised over $800 just on that day, and then they I think have hit almost 1,400 total. So it's a great event. The kids are learning about sort of global community support for developing nations, and yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the last time we were here, I can think of 3 significant events that I attended. One was the ribbon cutting at West Links, where you were there also and helped Mr. Rod Rice and his daughter Heather officially open their facility, both the golf and the housing. If you haven't had a chance to go through there and see the progress they're making, it is astounding at the rate that they can put those houses up, and they're beautiful inside too. They're doing a great job, great addition to our community. First of the summer cruise nights took place on Thursday night in Southampton, so if you're collector car, antique car buff. Those are every Thursday night, and they're in support of the Saugeen Memorial Hospital Foundations. And it's a lot of fun, especially watching the sunset and that sort of thing. And the third thing that I attended was on this past Monday in Toronto. I attended a meeting where the Solicitor General Sylvia Jones and the representative of Christine Elliott, the Deputy Premier, were there, and there was a presentation on an announcement they were making, or a new program where they have a police hospital transition plan come out. So this is dealing with people who are customers of the police force, for lack of a better term, who are suffering from some mental health issues, and how those transitions are made between the police into healthcare. And they've really streamlined the process, and there was lots of police forces and hospital organizations represented at this meeting, and they all told of great progress being made in streamlining that process, where people are pre-approved for admittance, and the police forces, where their valuable resources aren't tied up babysitting a patient at a hospital for 10, 12 hours at a time. So that was a very interesting meeting, and I was glad to represent the community there.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. It has been a busy couple of weeks, but two really interesting things and exciting things, I think. Last weekend, I attended the 20th anniversary of the new United Church in Port Elgin. The Vice Deputy Mayor was there as well. But it was 20 years since they moved from their facility on Mill Street up to the new facility. And, I think it's just always important just to remember how important those institutions are in our community. All those churches, all of them, and all the work that they do, supporting people on a day-to-day basis in a way that they don't advertise. But without them, we would sure miss the gap that they would leave in our community. And the United Church in Port Elgin is obviously a big player, and so it was great to celebrate that with them. And the other one that I will mention was on Friday. I was able to participate in the ribbon cutting of the completed project at Denny's Dam, a project which was spearheaded by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission project, and funded by the provincial and federal governments, a project which is actively protecting our lake from sea lamprey, which at one time nearly devastated the fisheries in Lake Huron, and could do so again if that dam had breached. Could have been a major issue, and that was a long time coming, that project, but completed through some great work. And really important, I think, to note the outstanding work done by the Fisheries Commission and the federal and provincial governments to work with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, making sure that they and their community were involved in that project and supportive of it. And you could tell, being at that presentation, that it really was a community-supported endeavor in an area that is of great cultural significance to the people of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and so it was well worth all the effort that was put in by all parties to make that happen. So it was a great event, and I was happy to be there. Councillor Grace.
If I'm not cutting you off.
No,
okay,
sure.
I wondered, there are two other things I wanted to mention that I forgot about.
Go ahead.
One was last Saturday morning at the Coliseum in Southampton, the end of the Rotary Shore Run, and the Health and Wellness Fair, and our staff put a lot of work into organizing that. There were a number of community members there, including the Rotary clubs, recognizing the runners. It looked like a very big turnout. I think there were maybe over 800 people who participated in the run, so that was a terrific event. And then, even though it was freezing, the mayor and I participated in the Eat Alley event that was sponsored by the Southampton BIA last Sunday night, and it was a great event despite the weather. And so I just want to commend the Southampton BIA for putting that on. It was a fundraiser for the Hospital Foundation.
As you guys have said all these things, a number of these things were I was at, and I can't believe they all happened in the last 2 weeks. It's been a ridiculously busy 2 weeks. Anyway, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? We'll reconvene at 0:25 after the hour.